NRATV with Grant Stinchfield.
Howdy, folks. Welcome to the program. One of my liberal friends from New York, yes, I do have some liberal friends from New York, asked me why I want the Senate to push through Judge Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court right away, now, and not wait. My answer is blunt and to the point. I don't want to wait till after midterms when there's a small chance that we will not control the confirmation process in the Senate, because the judge is a strong defender of freedom and the Second Amendment. It's why we need him on the court. I also firmly believe he's 100% innocent, and we cannot bow to liberal smear campaigns. The importance of putting him on the high court now is everything when it comes to securing the liberty we enjoy in this nation as our founders wanted us to. That's it. Well, my buddy's reply was this: well, that's partisan. And my words back was, grow up. It's all partisan. Everything in Washington is. I believe what I believe, and I believe in doing what's right. Yes, I align myself with the Republicans because they're my best option. This is about putting a conservative on the bench. There is no doubt about that, who also is the victim of dirty politics like I have never seen before. There is no evidence against him, so yes, I support Judge Kavanaugh. Call that partisan. Fine. It's about fighting back against every partisan stall, cheat, collude techniques used by the Democrats. Call that partisan. Again, fine. Here's a wake-up call. Washington, D.C. is a political town. It's where partisan politics are played. The reason the liberals win so often is because they cheat and they lie. That is tough to beat. But this is our time. We are in control. And that means if we are perceived as partisan for pushing the confirmation of a good man who believes in the Constitution and how it's written, not how he wants it to be written, then that is what we must do. Senate Republicans must not waver. It is their duty to secure the high court in common sense hands for decades to come. I want you to hear how Tom Cotton, the senator from Arkansas, responds to all of this.
It is pretty amusing to see Democratic senators poring over a high school yearbook as if it were the Da Vinci Code, Tucker, and hypocritical of senators like Amy Klobuchar, who are condemning Brett Kavanaugh for uncorroborated allegations from 36 years ago, yet Amy Klobuchar stands by Keith Ellison, who stands credibly accused of beating his ex-girlfriend just a few years ago with contemporaneous medical and police records. It just goes to show you that the Democrats are engaged in an orchestrated smear campaign to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh's character because they'll stop at nothing to prevent him from getting on the Supreme Court.
You know, the sad part is there are Americans out there that just don't see it. They go through their lives more focused on watching Entertainment Tonight than they are about ingesting news of the day. I said to a friend of mine, you've got to go find news from two sources. One, go find it from the left, and then go find it from the right and figure out the truth is someplace in the middle. There is no unbiased media today anymore. You're not getting the straight scoop anywhere. I try to give it to you, but I'm telling you, I'm giving you what I believe, okay? And what I believe is certainly the truth. But I urge people to go gather as much information as possible. Because what I will not do to you is lie to you, like the mainstream media does about Brett Kavanaugh, and bring up all kinds of unproven allegations to literally smear him. So in the end, so many Americans are unwilling to go out there and do their own homework. They're unwilling to tune in to numerous programs, including this one, in an effort to do their own homework. And so they get so confused about what is going on. And it's sad because it means the destruction of a good man and his character has somewhat been successful on behalf of the Democrats. Judge Kavanaugh's life will never be the same. He will never, ever be able to put all of this behind him, whether he sits on the high court or not. Just ask Justice Clarence Thomas about all of that. The prosecutor brought in by Republicans to question Miss Ford backs up my assessment that the whole thing just doesn't add up. Yes, Rachel Mitchell's report confirms what I warned you, that there's a strong possibility that Democrats have taken advantage of a soft-spoken woman, twisting her memories, using her as a perfect pawn to obliterate Judge Kavanaugh. That's right, Rachel Mitchell believes this circus has influenced the accuser to the point that her story should be questioned. So few are willing to do that. It's possible she believes her story, but it is now confused, and she is now confused as to who it was, maybe even manipulated into believing it was Brett Kavanaugh. What stood out to me and apparently Rachel Mitchell too, is the moment Miss Ford failed to name her attacker. It wasn't even part of everything that was so memorable that night to her. Watch.
Can you tell us what you don't forget about that night?
The stairwell, the living room, the bedroom, the bed on the right side of the room. As you walk into the room, there was a bed to the right, the bathroom in close proximity, the laughter, the uproarious laughter, and the multiple attempts to escape and the final ability to do so.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ford.
She didn't follow it up with a very important question about what don't you forget. Do you not forget Judge Brett Kavanaugh? Because she never named him. It's something the mainstream media has all but ignored. She remembers everything but Brett Kavanaugh. That was a blockbuster moment. The media failed to realize it. Senators failed to realize it. Rachel Mitchell, the veteran sex crimes investigator, did realize it. So did I. And it was a big one. And also, you've got to remember that because she doesn't name Brett Kavanaugh as one of the things that she most remembers from that night, you have to wonder, was it even him? Joining me now is managing editor for the Media Research Center, Brittany Hughes. Brittany, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much, Grant. You know, before we get started, I should probably just admit right now I'm not very credible. I once TP'd a guy's car in high school. So I just want to throw that out there in case that disqualifies me from being able to speak. Look, we're even beyond this at this point. We're now to the point where, journalists, if they want to call themselves that, are now debating whether or not it's a disqualifier that Brett Kavanaugh may or may not have thrown ice on somebody back in college in 1985. I mean, we're so wildly outside the realm of reality here at this point. This was hard to believe. This was really hard to believe even a couple weeks ago when it all came out, given the lack of corroborating witnesses, the lack of evidence, the fact that Dr. Ford can't remember key details, which is something that Ms. Mitchell brought up. Key details such as if you lived 7 miles away from the house that you claim this happened in and you can't remember how you got home in a day before cell phones where you couldn't have just picked up a cell phone and called somebody. I mean, these are big, big details. But now we're on to NBC giving a platform to another woman who is now saying that he helped run gang rape rings back in high school. That's not journalism. When NBC has to preference an interview with, by the way, we can't verify anything that she said, that's not journalism. That's giving a platform to somebody to make unsubstantiated allegations that will destroy this man's reputation regardless of whether they're true.
All right, so Brittany, I'm only going to play a soundbite from MSNBC interviewing Ms. Swetnick to make a point. Normally, I would not give this a platform whatsoever, but it's imperative to play it. Then we can talk about it. As someone myself who was in the mainstream media for over 20 years as an investigative reporter, and I'll tell you why this is so egregious on their behalf, but let's roll it first.
I'm quite a shy person and quite a private person. And I wouldn't be here today except for about 6 weeks ago. I happened to learn about Brett Kavanaugh becoming one of the people who was shortlisted to go to the Supreme Court.
How did you meet Brett Kavanaugh? Did you actually meet him?
I did actually meet him. I remember meeting him because I remember he's got a very distinctive face, and as does Mark Judge. And I remember specifically meeting him, being introduced to him.
Did you know anything about Brett Kavanaugh?
No. I believe he might have been wearing a Georgetown Prep uniform, which a lot of the boys used to wear at least a uniform or parts of their uniform.
At the party?
Sometimes.
Not credible to me at all. And the bottom line here in all of this, Brittany Hughes, is NBC News now acknowledges, or I would use the term admits, that they cannot corroborate any part of her story whatsoever. I worked for NBC, and I worked for an NBC-owned and operated station for most of my career, including WNBC in New York, in Hartford, and in Dallas, all stations owned by NBC. I dealt with the same attorneys that go over that interview. Those attorneys that I talk to on a daily basis would never have allowed this story to go forward when I was working there 10 years ago, 8 years ago, but they do now because everything has switched in the mainstream media as far as this all-out assault. You've got to corroborate. You've got to have at least 2 sources before you run with something. They've opened themselves up, and I can tell you with certainty that there are attorneys at NBC, even though they are liberal and they're self-admitted liberals, I promise you, they are not happy that this went through. And I lay this solely at the feet of the president of NBC News, this guy that used to run the Today Show and now he's running NBC News. He's the one pushing this because he's an activist. And activists have taken over that network.
Well, and I certainly hope they wouldn't be happy with this. Look, I was an investigative journalist, too, for 2 separate news outlets. That's how I got my start. And I remember, I mean, you had to know that you knew that you knew, and you had to make sure that you had sources, you had backup sources, especially to make claims of this magnitude. These are not small claims. This isn't even just, if you can imagine something worse, this isn't even just that he tried to sexually assault one woman. This is that he was actually active in helping train guys to sexually assault multiple women at multiple parties. I mean, this is a woman who claims that she went to multiple parties both before and after she found out that this was happening, that she even went to these parties after it happened to her. She's making wild accusations with absolutely no proof. Nobody has come forward and said that they remember any of this. I mean, this is something that she's alleging was widespread and pretty well known. And everybody's looking at her like, you know, she has absolutely nobody to corroborate this. And NBC is running with it as if it is fact, as if it is the gospel truth. This is absolutely wild. It is absolutely egregious. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to speculate on what legal ramifications it could have, but you have to imagine it could have some. You know, this, we're off the farm here.
Here's the bottom line, and this is why it is so hard to win in a court for slander or something like that, because clearly Judge Kavanaugh is now a public official. You've got protections when you go and say things about public officials, and you should. We don't ever want them to have an ability, well, I'm just going to sue you in court so you can't say something about me. You know, Lord knows that's what Dianne Feinstein would do to all of us here at NRATV just to shut us up. So that's a good rule, the public official rule. The problem is you've got to prove that someone now knew the allegation was false before saying it, okay? That goes for NBC and it goes for Ms. Swetnick. They have to know it's false and then air it anyway. Now, to prove that in court, that you knew something was false first, is nearly impossible, which is why you don't see these slander cases in public officials, against public officials, go very far.
Yeah, and you know, I think that this is kind of NBC's point here, and this is what we see across the liberal media in general, right? That this isn't really about putting forward facts. This isn't about, you know, being worried about kickback if something they put out ends up being false. I mean, you see it all over Twitter. All you have to do is follow a handful of reporters who claim to be unbiased, and you see the same thing over and over again, just unsubstantiated allegations that get thrown out there, and nobody seems to be worried about, about any consequences of this, because it's not actually about fact. It's not actually about putting out information. It's not about informing the public. It's about a smear campaign. It is about what will get the most clicks, what will get the most views, but also what is most sensationalized and what plays best to the liberal agenda. They know, they knew it when they put it out there, because they had to admit, look, we can't verify any of this as fact. They knew when they put it out there that that wasn't the point, right? The point is to continue to build this case in the court of public opinion, which doesn't rely on facts or evidence, against Brett Kavanaugh, to paint a picture of him, which is exactly what Senate Democrats did all last week during that hearing. Again, it wasn't about getting to the bottom. It wasn't about getting the facts. It was about painting a generalized picture and running with sound bites, not actually making a case. And I think it's absolutely egregious.
It is, and that's why we call them activists, not journalists. Brittany Hughes, as always, we appreciate you.
Thanks, Grant.
All right. When we talk about the Judge Kavanaugh hearings, I hope we're not running music yet, because I want to get to the Lindsey Graham soundbite. And it's an important soundbite because what Lindsey Graham said on Hannity last night is very important. And he came up with a fabulous idea. Lindsey Graham, look, the senator from South Carolina, comes up with some great defense of conservatives. Out of nowhere, this guy comes out. Now all of a sudden, he's the guy that we're all looking for to stand up for common sense now in the United States Senate. Way to go, Lindsey Graham. He said on Hannity that if Kavanaugh isn't confirmed, President Trump should nominate him again and make it a campaign issue. Here, listen.
Now, what would happen if something really weird did occur and we're one vote short? Here's what I would tell the president. I would appeal the verdict of the Senate to the ballot box. This good man should not be destroyed. If you legitimize this process by one vote short, woe be unto the next person. I'd hate to be the next person nominated. I would feel horrible that we destroyed Kavanaugh. So what would I do? I would renominate him, and I would take this case to the American people, and I'd ask voters in Indiana, in Missouri, and North Dakota, and other places where Trump won, saying who he would nominate if he got to be president, and see if the voters want to appeal the verdict of their senator.
So what he's saying is, take it to the ballot box. Not a direct vote on Judge Kavanaugh, of course, but a vote on the senators who voted against him. You talk about Heidi Heitkamp in North Dakota. She's up for the election of her life, a state that Donald Trump won by 20 points. If for some reason we don't have the votes, renominating Judge Kavanaugh is a brilliant idea. And then let the people in those states, like West Virginia, Lindsey Graham failed to mention that, where Joe Manchin is. He wants to win in West Virginia. He better be on board with Judge Kavanaugh. I think they will see that. You know, we may lose some Republican senators in this, and it will be shameless if they cross party lines and vote with the Democrats here. We may lose them, but we may pick up, before having to go to the midterms, some Democrats like Manchin and Heitkamp, knowing that I believe they'll be doing what's right and siding with the people of their state and this country. All right, Relentless with Dana Lash is coming up later today. Dana joined me recently to talk about the Kavanaugh confirmation hearings. I leave you with her thoughts on Dianne Feinstein. I'm Grant Stinchfield. Thanks for watching.
She sat on this for 6 weeks. Her staff was the one that leaked it to the Washington Post against Dr. Ford's wishes, without even providing Dr. Ford any counsel or any means of protection. Or I don't even know if she received a heads up that this is going to be leaked to the press. That's how everyone knew her name. That's how everyone knew other details of this. They knew it before the majority members on the Senate Judiciary Committee. And I understand that Dianne Feinstein is in a very difficult position within her own primary in the state of California. But that doesn't mean that a woman who has spent her career talking about protecting women can throw one under the bus.
You're watching NRATV with Grant Stinchfield.